Okay, so we have talked a lot about environmentalism is English and math. And now we're going to talk about the state. So, further states, local, okay. So there are some essential questions that we need to think about throughout science, but also just this entire project we're doing. So we need to think about how does life on Earth depend on climate? And if you don't know what climate is, that's okay. We're going to talk about that later. But we need to think about that. How does our life depend on the climate we live in? The second one, how is life on Earth shaped by climate? Pretty similar to question 1. Question 3, how have these events impacted the Earth's climate? So how have their behavior, how have things done, how have that impacted the climate of the Earth? 4, what are the consequences of the Earth's changing climate? And 5, what can we, as responsible citizens, do to help reduce the effects of the Earth's changing climate? So, if you haven't guessed, today we are going to talk about climate and change, and then wait a bit. Okay, so there are some key vocabulary that we can go over quickly in case you don't know what it is. So the first is global warming. Raise your hand if you have ever heard of global warming. Okay, so if you don't know what global warming is a gradual increase in temperature in the Earth's atmosphere. So global warming isn't like, oh, it's really hot today and tomorrow it's really cold. Global warming is normally in the summertime it's 90 degrees, but because the Earth atmosphere layers have gotten warmer, our weather has gotten warmer, our climate has gotten warmer. So global warming is a very long, gradual change in the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. Climate change, I just said that, climate change is long shifts in temperature and weather patterns. So again, if today is 89 and tomorrow's 91, that's not climate change. Climate change would be if, it's 80 degrees every day and month for the last 5 years. But then we notice it's starting to get up to like 81 or 87, 89, 90. That's climate change. It's long changes in patterns. And climate change leads to global warming. So they're all tied together. And then the atmosphere is the mass of the air that surrounds the Earth. So we have our Earth, and then we have layers of the atmosphere around Earth. And the atmosphere is protecting us from the sun's rays and heat. But the atmosphere gets thinner because of global warming. It gets thinner, it gets warmer, and that's what causes changes in our climate and long-term global warming. So I know it's complicated. It will make more sense as we go along. So today we're going to be mainly focusing on the difference between climate change and weather, because I know those two terms are very confusing. Because they do have similarities, but they are two different things. So climate change, like we said, two sides of it. Climate change is change over a long period of time. It takes years for the climate to change. Whereas weather is a short time frame. It's a day's time, it's an hour's time. If you look at the weather forecast, sometimes it will say 9 a.m. 65 cloudy, 10 a.m. 66 and cloudy. So that alone is weather can change hourly. It can be raining in the morning and sunny and hot in the afternoon. Climate is a long period of time. Like we talked about, it's not just going to happen overnight. So, for example, in March, the temperature has been shifting. In the past year, it would be around 65 degrees. Now, temperatures in March are sitting at the 70s. So, like we said, on average, it was sitting at 65 in March, and now we're getting, the atmosphere is getting thinner, it's getting warmer, so now it's around 70 in March. That's climate change. Weather, today, it is raining and the temperature is 73 degrees. That is today. The weather today is that. It's not an average, it's not a weekly, just today. It is weather, it's 73 degrees, it's raining. So, Okay, so what are the causes of global warming? When I asked to improve on global warming, only a couple of you knew. So I'm going to talk about what causes global warming. And just remembrance, if you forgot, global warming is the shift in the Earth's atmosphere that creates warmer, Earth is warmer, essentially. So energy use. I know a lot of you probably noticed we've had an increase in Chromebooks, we've had an increase in cars, television, iPads, cell phones. All of these things increase energy use in our environment. Energy emits rays into the air. This air conditioning is emitting energy and rays into the atmosphere. All of these things warm the earth. Deforestation, that's cutting down trees. So, as we know, trees gives oxygen and a lot of other things, but we've been cutting down a lot of trees to build more buildings and houses and whatever. And so, by cutting down all these trees, it is making the earth more susceptible to global warming. Increase in pollution. So, just like with us driving more cars, making more houses and buildings, there's been an increase in pollution, and pollution can cause overloading. Pollution can also be throwing your trash outside. Pollution can be people who smoke. Pollution can be the gas coming out of cars. There's a lot of things pollution can be. Fracking is a big word. Fracking is basically when you get oil out of the ground. So my father is a fracker, which means that he builds parts to give to engineers that then go into the oceans and the mountains and dig oil out of the ocean floors, out of the mountains, and then it get transmitted into oil for our cars. So fracking is just getting oil out of the ground. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but fracking has some major consequences, especially for major oil spills. We have talked about oil spills in your English classes, also in your social studies classes, but fracking is a really big issue for people. And then the last is consumer practices, not recycling anymore, throwing away all the stuff, we're wasteful, all of these things can cause global warming. So take a minute, write it down with the Bible, because this is really important for this entire weekend. Okay. So we talked about the causes of global warming, and now we're going to talk about the effects. So cause, what makes global warming happen, effects. So because of global warming, we get rising temperatures. Rising temperatures lead to climate change, global warming. It's getting hotter, right? Right now we're sitting at almost 90 degrees. It's really hot, and it's not even end of May, June yet. Unpredictable weather patterns. So that's kind of what I was talking about with weather, but it used to be done snowing by January, February. In the last couple of years, it's been snowing and really cold until March, April. But on the flip side of it, it's also been really hot some of those months. So it's just, you really don't know. You really don't know what the weather's going to be. It was 65 degrees last week, and this week is 90. It's unpredictable. Another effect of global warming is an increase in extreme weather events like hurricanes, tornadoes. That's because again, when it gets really cold and then it's really warm really quickly, there's a change in the air pressure, and that can cause tornadoes. And then when you look closer to the water, making the earthquakes. Rising sea levels is also another effect of global warming because it's getting warmer. Ice caps are melting, creating more water in the oceans. Sea levels are rising. And then loss of wildlife and biodiversity. So, like I said on the last slide, deforestation is a cause of global warming. Cutting down trees is a cause of global warming. But then, if there's no trees and there's no forest, where's the wildlife going to live? Where are the animals going to live? They're dying off because there's nowhere for them to live. So, as you can see, there's a lot of causes, a lot of effects to global warming. That's why it's really important that we are paying attention and making sure we are doing everything that we can do to make sure we are not contributing to global warming. Okay, so we're going to watch this video. It's called Climate Change for Kids, and this is just going to bring home all of the ideas that we have talked about today, because I know that it's a lot of information. So we're going to watch this video, and then we can talk about it after.
Climate change. Weather changes often. In the morning, as you head to school, it might be cold and cloudy. By the end of the day, it could be warm and sunny. In Tonga, it might downpour in one hour, but be calm and clear the next. And at the South Pole, the weather could be clear in the afternoon, but very stormy by evening. Weather is always changing, but climate does not change day to day, or even month to month like weather does. Climate is the average temperature and conditions in place over a long period.
Okay, and that's what we talked about. Climate isn't a day-to-day thing, it is long term, which is what they just said.
The climate in one place on Earth is different than another place. For example, the climate in a desert can be hot and dry, while the climate in a rainforest is usually warm and humid. And in some mountain areas, the climate is cold all year long. Unlike the weather that changes often, it usually takes hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years for changes to occur in climate. Day to day, you will notice weather changes, but you probably won't notice changes to the climate. In the world today, when you hear the word climate change, it usually refers to global warming or the process of the Earth heating up.
Okay, so again, like I talked about, the Earth is warming up, the atmosphere is getting thinner, and this is causing climate change. And they said that global warming can kind of be changed interchangeably with climate change and global warming, because they do follow along the same lines. So climate change, global warming, the process of the Earth heating up.
Climate change and the weather are subjects that are often discussed by many people. Nearly everyone can agree on things related to the weather, but sometimes people disagree about climate change or global warming. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. During all those years, the climate has changed. Many thousands of years ago, a large part of the Earth was covered in ice during an era called the Ice Age. And dinosaurs once walked on the Earth's surface during another period called the Mesozoic era. Climate changed during those first 4.5 billion years and will continue to change in the future. For example, in the last 100 years between the 1900s and the 2000s, Earth's average temperature has increased about 1.33 degrees Fahrenheit. And over the past 200 years, it has increased about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That may not sound like a big change, but it still affects the Earth. Have you ever heard of a greenhouse or seen one? A greenhouse is used by some farmers, florists, and others to grow plants. It is a glass-covered building that absorbs heat from the sun. The trapped heat makes greenhouses very warm, which allows things to grow inside of them even in winter. Earth is also covered like a greenhouse, but it's not covered with glass. Instead, it is covered by a layer of atmosphere. Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trap heat from the sun, warming up Earth and giving it a greenhouse effect, which means it acts just like a greenhouse. The greenhouse gases are mostly made up of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. These gases are kind of like a blanket for the Earth, similar to the glass on a greenhouse. The gases help keep Earth warm enough so that people, animals, and plants can all live there. However, When these gases increase, it causes the Earth to become warmer. Think of it like a heavier blanket. If you are sleeping under a blanket and all through the night, someone keeps placing more blankets on you, you will get warmer and warmer. Climate change causes the Earth to get warmer too. But
Okay, we're gonna talk more about greenhouse gases in the next part of the lesson, but I think what the video said was really important because greenhouse gases and greenhouses can be really helpful and really beneficial because again, as trees are being cut down, as we're getting less forests and stuff, it is good that people have these greenhouses to make the plants and the vegetables and everything. But just like there's goods to it, there's also bads. And greenhouses alone are actually a contributor to global warming. We'll talk about it later, but that is important to know that even something like a greenhouse, which is supposed to be used to be helpful for this earth, is also one of the main contributors to global warming by releasing greenhouse gases. So, anyway, just a little something to think about.
it happens gradually or takes a long time. Of course, when you are sleeping, there may be other reasons you are getting warmer too, not just the blankets that are being placed on you. But regardless of why you are getting warmer, it would probably be best to try and prevent the blankets from getting too heavy and too warm. In other words, it's probably best to prevent the Earth from getting too warm as well. We do this by understanding some of the causes of climate change and global warming. There may be some causes of climate change that cannot be prevented and have very little to do with people, while others are most likely caused by people. Here are three of those things. The burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are natural fuels found in and on Earth, such as oil, coal, and natural gas. They are formed in the earth from dead plants and animals over millions of years. That's why the first part of the name is fossil.
Um, when it comes to fossil fuels, fracking is involved a lot because you get fossil fuels by fracking, so they go hand in hand. We're going to talk about fossil fuels too, but when they're talking about fossil fuels, they're also talking about fracking. So,
Those fossils are then burned and used for fuel, which is why they are called fossil fuels. Fossil fuels give us heat, gas, and oil, which are all things that most humans need and want. However, when the fossil fuels are burned, they release gases into the atmosphere. Those gases are then added to the blanket that covers the earth, making it warmer and adding to the greenhouse effect. Next is farming. It may be hard to believe, but farming also contributes to the greenhouse effect. Methane gas is released into the atmosphere when a cow releases its gas, or farts. That might not seem like a big deal when one cow passes gas, but when there are over 1.5 billion cows in the world farting daily, it really adds to the blanket covering the earth. Deforestation is the cutting down of trees and forests to make way for farms, roads, oil wells, and dams. One of the greenhouse gases that adds to the blanket around the earth is called carbon dioxide. Trees and forests absorb carbon dioxide, which gets rid of some of that gas. Unfortunately, the more trees that are cut down, the less trees there are to absorb the carbon dioxide, which further leads to the greenhouse effect.
okay. So if you didn't catch that, they said that when deforestation is happening and they're cutting down all of these trees, there's more carbon dioxide being absorbed into the atmosphere. So trees are useful to absorb that, and that's more complicated science go into later down the road. But trees absorb some of the gases from the earth, and if there's no trees, there's nothing to absorb it. So that's kind of what they were talking about. We need to move on. We'll finish this video a little bit later, but I think it is important to note that there's a lot of causes, a lot of effects that are really detrimental to our earth. So I think of us, we need to think about what we are doing that is hurting our environment and things we can really do to help the environment. And we'll continue to talk about this later. There's a lot of lessons across all of the subjects that all relate to this. But just think about it. And think about the main things you can do. You know, you can't help to stop cutting down trees. You know, you're not a fracker. You're a fifth grader. So the things you can do, pollution, throw your stuff away, recycle the stuff that should be recycled. You know, carpool. If you're playing baseball, make find a teammate to ride with instead of taking a bunch of different cars. You know, when you're not in a room, turn the lights off. When you're not at home, turn your air conditioning off. Just little things like that that you can do to help global warming, climate change. So we are done today. Yep. Thank you so much.